Scary EIRE. EIRE is the Irish or Gaelic word for Ireland. Paranormal means all the things that are impossible to explain by known natural forces or by science. And Ireland is steeped in lore, ghosts, blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, hunger, desperation, and charm. Oh, and the paranormal. Welcome to Scary EIRE.
Mark Manning.
Well, hello, strangers. It's been a while, and welcome back indeed to the aforementioned Scary EIRE. Yeah, it's been a bit of an extended break. After I came back from New York, well, things got a little bit wiry and neglect came into play, but there's a reason for it, and I'm going to tell you all about it. But first, I believe in getting stuck right in. P.J Doogue is one of many PJs who are in the paranormal community. He is the founder of Beyond Ireland Paranormal. He's an expert at investigating the county he fell in love with many years ago, Carlow.
Follow me up to Carlow.
So, was it an angry spirit, a poltergeist, or the dead from a famine pit that made him and his beloved wife and child flee from their home? Listen in. Let's just explore. So, what happened in the house that made you, really kind of scratch your head at the easiest and at the worst get really worried that you had to seek help with the church? What was going on?
Right. Okay. And just put it right. We were about 4 weeks in. Okay. And I had this Wi-Fi system in the sitting room, and it was record, okay, and tape deck at the time that goes show you the year. And realistically, I was big into Guns N' Roses. So this night, about 10 to 3 in the morning, the hi-fi system came on, and banging out of it was "Welcome to the Jungle," right? And the wife jumps up in the bed and she says, "Turn that off. How did you leave that on?" You see, she went up to bed before me, thought I fell asleep, came up to bed and left the hi-fi system blasting over it. And I'm sort of looking at her going, no, I had that turned off. So here, out of bed, down the stairs, into the sitting room, I'm sort of looking at it. Power's under it, it's blasting out. So I go over, switch it off. So about 2 nights later, same thing happens at the same time. So I said to myself, the hell is going on here? So that was grand. Powered it off again. Thought maybe there's a slight fault with the Wi-Fi system.
Yeah, the wiring maybe. Yeah.
The wiring, because it was only I had it roughly about 5 weeks. So what I did was went back down to the shop, brought it down to the shop and says, "Hey lads, I have a warranty here. This is turning itself on." And I wasn't thinking anything paranormal. I was just thinking the obvious. It might be a fault. It might be a wiring issue. Who knows? After 2 days, they contacted me and says, "Look, there's no issue with that. We can't find anything wrong with that." So I said, "Okay." And went down, collected it, placed it back into the sitting room. And about 4 or 5 nights later, it came back on. And I says, lads, these didn't do their job. They must have just saying, "Hey, all that he's doing, he must be dreaming that it's coming on or something," because so on. So this time I said, right, I went down, plugged it out. I never thought of plugging it back in. And the next night, the hi-fi system comes on. And I jumped out of the bed, run down the stairs, forgot I had it plugged out from the mains. I could see the power on, went over and went to plug it out and went, uh-oh, how is that possible?
Wow. And can I ask, when it was playing was it all the time "Welcome to the Jungle" or was it just random?
No, it basically, believe me, I took the record out of the deck and everything else, and it would be the radio that had come on, and whatever channel it was sort of fixed at the time, it'd just be blaring, but the volume was very high on it. So literally, you would have to turn the dial on it, which I had the dial turned down even.
Yes.
And I was like, And I was still not sort of saying anything paranormal because actually, Mark, I had no belief in it whatsoever. Thing about it was, I literally took the whole hi-fi system out of the sitting room, took it apart, took the speakers off, everything else, and put it under the stairs because A, I wanted a good night's sleep. B, I didn't want the child disturbed anymore. And C, I didn't want the wife going at me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So,
and was it waking Nicole at the time, or?
Yes, it was. You know, so as a 6-month-old child, yes, absolutely it would.
It's bad enough, without anything, disturbing them, because they just do it themselves. But when they're being woken, I could see, yourself, sleep deprivation is used as a major form of torture. That would be driving you mad. And of course you could put it down to a short circuit or a loose wire or a socket or something. But when you went and you literally stripped it back to its components, plugged it out of the wall, and it's gone off again. So that's like a real ring a radio station time nearly. However, there must have been other events that kind of consolidated your suspicions.
That was what I call the light stuff. Okay, that was pretty easy.
Must be more. Right, go for it.
Well, there is more. And the thing about it was that my brother at the time, he came down. He says, "Hey, P.J, can I sort of crash with you for a few weeks? I want to get away from the parents." And I need a relationship with a female from Carlow as well. So at the time I went, okay, that's not rude or anything else. Okay, you can lodge in the back room, seeing that it's a 4-bedroom house, no problem whatsoever. When you go out, make sure you come back at a reasonable time because of a young child in the house, right? After a couple of weeks, he knocked on the bedroom door at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? I said, yeah, come in. The wife was looking at me going, "What's up with him?" And I said, "Don't know." So he comes in and says, "PJ," he says, "why did you wake me up?" I says, "What do you mean? You were standing in the doorway and you were sort of making a laugh at me." I says, "No, I wasn't." And he says, "No, PJ, you were. You had a leather jacket and the white jeans on." And I looked at him. I went, "Gosh, is this lad doing some shit or what?" You turn around and sort of think, what's going on here? I says, "I haven't been out of this bed. We came to bed at 11:30 and you actually woke me up knocking on the door." And no, Peter, you were in my doorway sort of making a laugh at me. And the wife said to me, "Tell him to go into the room now." And I said, "Look, can you just go into the back room there and just leave it alone?" Because I says, I have no explanation for this. And so the next morning he got up and he was sort of in sulky form and you were sort of going, "Oh gosh, he has the hump." He was the youngest in the family. I sort of approached him. I said, "Look, Ian, I never came in your room. I never knocked on the door." I said, "That has nothing to do with it." So he says, "Look, we'll agree to disagree." I says, "No," because I says, "I didn't come into the room." So the following night, here we hear this massive bang down the stairs, right? He says, "What the hell?" And so I jump out of the bed, and here he is at the top of the stairs, right?
Hang on, he's at the top of the stairs or at the bottom of the stairs?
No, he's at the bottom of the stairs.
Right, okay.
And I said to myself, "Oh my gosh, he's dead." Because he was literally mangled on at the bottom of the stairs. So I run down the stairs, and I says, "The hell?" He says, "PJ, I'm getting out of this house." And I looked at him and I says, "Why, what did you do? Did you miss a step and just fall down the stairs?" He said, "No, PJ, I was pushed." He says, "I was coming down, ready to walk down the stairs." And he says, "That's it. Somebody pushed me from behind." I looked at him and I says, I have enough of this now. It's still not questioning the fact that it was a paranormal situation. So the next day he got his bag and left. And I thought, well, we'll have a bit of peace now. I think literally, it could have been too much drink or something like that. A few days after that, I was in the kitchen doing something. I got a fierce pain in my arm. And I had short sleeves on at the time. And the wife says to me, "Look at the bruising on your arm." It was like somebody had grabbed me.
Oh, PJ, I want to do a little dance after here now. That's really freaky.
Yeah.
Go on.
And it was the impression of somebody's hand had pressed into my sort of arm and it left it all bruised. I said, "How the hell is going on here?" And still, I wasn't saying anything paranormal. Okay.
No, but it's getting personal.
But, yeah, at this point, it was getting personal, and I was still not sort of shouting the paranormal card. Okay. And I sort of went to bed that night, and I remember sort of, sometimes I have to think myself asleep. And I was mulling through certain things in the day and this, that, and the other, and that was it. I was gone. And then I woke up to not being able to breathe, like I was being choked in the bed, and like something was literally laying on my chest. And I sort of jumped out of the bed, and I was all panicky and fearful, went down the stairs. And the wife came down the stairs because she seen how distressed I got, because I was really scared. I won't hide back and say I wasn't. I really was. And she could see the marks around my throat. And she said, "What's going on?" And I says, "Something was trying to choke me in the bed." And I didn't really want to say it, but I had to say it because it was the only thing I could say. She said, "What's this?" And, at this point, first time I actually said it was, "Is this house haunted?" And this was coming from a guy that had no belief in the paranormal whatsoever. I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll inquire off the landlord and see did any previous tenants, because I think the previous tenants were students." So I ring up the landlord the next day, and I said, and I still didn't want to sound stupid. I said to him, I says, "Look, was there anything odd reported to you?" He says, "What do you mean?" I says, "No, just odd, like things happening in the house that you couldn't explain." And he said, "The only thing I noticed is that people don't really stay long in it." I went, "Okay."
Can you blame them?
I said, "Nothing else."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you blame them?
The max that anybody stayed in the house was roughly about 3-4 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And he says, I just took it that they wanted to move on, and that was it, because he really sort of was easygoing. He wasn't one of these that was sort of hard pressed or anything else, that if you could stay your 12 months on the contract or go before that, but you lose your down deposit. So,
yes.
you default on it straight off. So I went, okay, he actually has no knowledge of this. I sort of left it alone, and about 3-4 days there, the wife says to me, she says, "Look, I'll tell you what, go out with," she was friends with a girl called Samantha. She got to know her because of being from Newbridge and everything else. She was still sort of finding her way through making friendships in Carlow and so on. And I said, "Go ahead, knock yourself out. I'll mind Nicole here." And she says, "Will you make up the bottles for the night?" Absolutely no problem. So here I was. And after she went, I says, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go on Nintendo now, but I'll make up the bottles first." Child, like in the game system. Here I was making up the bottles. The next minute, one of the bottles bursted, right, from the bottle. I saw our first thought, "Oh, there must have been a fault in that." And then when I turned it around, I said, "How's that possible?" And it was like, the only way I can describe it is if you got a red hot poker and stuck it up at the base of the bottle, it will burn upwards.
Sorry, I know this might sound a stupid question. Was it a plastic bottle? Or
yes, there was a plastic bottle.
So you're back in the 90s sometime, early 90s, are we talking, yeah?
We're talking roughly about 93.
Okay.
So, and I thought to myself, that's strange, that's impossible. I was expecting to see a crack on
totally, yeah.
Totally, because of the pouring in the hot water and
sure,
and mixing the formula, and next minute you see it's burnt upwards.
Yes, like something had poked into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, "How's that possible?" And still at the same time, I kept looking at it. I went, okay, I'll just discard it. I can't explain it. And, and still logic was telling me that's not possible, because I'd have to have something hot, shove it up the way the plastic would go upwards inside the bottle. I sort of left it alone, didn't say anything to the wife. And about 3 nights later after that, I woke up with a burning sensation all across my back and chest. And when I jumped out of the bed, I felt like I was on fire, for a better word. And I turned on the light, I looked straight at the mirror, and the wife went pale. There were scrapes all the way down my back, all across my chest, and I had no explanation for it. I didn't do it to myself. Obviously, I can't reach behind my own back and scrape it from the base of my neck right down to the base of my back. And I said, okay, I'm just don't know what to do. So I said to the wife, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to sleep down in the sitting room. And at that point, I, for a better word, got a punch to the arm. Couldn't see what punched me or anything else, but it was physical. I could feel the impact. And she looked at me and she seen the way I sort of went down, and she said, what's going on? And next minute, she got a punch to the back. And she said, that's it. And she ran down the stairs into the sitting room. I came down, pulled the mattress off the bed, and that's where we started to sleep. All of us, with the child and everything else. We wouldn't sleep upstairs because sometimes the way we think we protect ourselves when we're in groups, or if we go into a certain room that's not really going on while the activity that is going on upstairs, it might leave us alone. So I said to the wife, I said, look, I'm going to go to a priest. So I went down to, I won't say what church it is because I don't want to embarrass them. And
so you were at your wit's end. Are you a religious man, or are you like a lot of us of a general belief? Or
no, I wouldn't have considered myself religious at that point. I would have been just general belief, in what you sort of reared into. Now I would say I am a religious man, but thing about it was that went in, and I remember waiting on this priest to finish his confession.
Hold the priest. Let's just resume here. So you're in a house, you're a young man, it's circa 1993, you're in County Carlow, you are getting on with your life. One night, and it's not the first time it happens, your stereo takes up and starts playing by itself. So nothing too odd about that until you plug it out. And even after that, it still starts playing by itself. We move on in time. Ian, your younger brother, he comes to stay. He accuses you of acting the maggot by leaning in his doorway in a leather jacket and insulting him. That's
correct.
That goes on. Then we have the situation where it really gets like physical, and also there's an anomaly with the milk bottle. You must have been at your wit's end by the time you arrived at the priest's house. So take it from there.
I was, because I'm sort of a very stubborn individual, and I was sort of trying to ride it out, but I knew at this stage that wasn't possible.
Of course, especially with a child in the house as well. This is sounding like a poltergeist now at this point,
Yeah, and what I was dealing with here was harmful, okay? And I didn't know what extent it would go to. And the way I looked at it was, okay, if I went to a priest, explained it to him, he would come over and do something about it, because you get these thoughts in your head that, okay, a priest can do everything and get rid of things that you can't explain. And the priest looked at me like I was Stonewall Mac, okay?
I know.
And he wouldn't touch on it. So I said, okay, that went very well. And went down different avenues to sort of dealing with this problem. Every time I went down sort of through other charismatic groups and Christian groups and so on, I was sort of coming up against a wall, because there was just this weird fear about it. It was like taboo. We don't want to talk about it. I just was at my wit's end. Sleep was non-existent. And you were just thinking about it the whole time. You were dreading sort of roughly from 8 o'clock onwards in the evening. Yeah. The only thing you could think of was how to get through the night, and that was the reality in it. And you couldn't sort of get any validation from anybody that at the time that there's something about this house, or somebody has come up to you and say, hey lad, if I was you, I'd get out of the house. We had an experience or whatever. There was none of the above. Seemingly anybody that lived in the house got out of it very quickly and didn't really want to sort of explain why at the time. And as I said, yeah, it wasn't until I knocked on the door of that lecturer and he was sort of putting text on that I'd be gone within 3 months.
Yeah.
And he couldn't believe how long I sort of lasted out. Now, I didn't win anything. He confirmed what I feared, that he says anybody that was there previous to yourself left the house and the landlord had knowledge that there was something going on, because he said people were telling him, and obviously they were telling the landlord, that something they couldn't explain rightly was happening to them. And the only way to sort of deal with it was get out of there.
Sure.
And the thing about it was that when he explained about the owner, which died 10 years previous, being in the house, or I sort of got the sense that we had an angry spirit here. And if you sort of died in your own house, weren't found for a week, and, maybe out of that situation, this aggressive haunt happened, okay? But what was interesting about it was that years after, I was hearing reports about other people going in, students going into it, literally they were beginning to voice that the house was haunted. Then couples would go into it and they would have the same experience. And then up to about a year ago, I remember I was out for a drink. I sort of knew this man, and he sort of came up to me and he says, look, just looking for your advice on something, PJ. He says, what's that? And the man's name was Martin. He says, my son needs €1,000 off me because he wants to get out of the house he's living in. I said, okay, right. And I says, what's the problem? And he says, and you see, it's still sort of with some people, it's a stigma to say it's haunted.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, he stated that the house is haunted. Well, I think he's trying to get an easy €1,000 out of me. And I don't know why you're trying it out or anything. And I says, where is he living? And he says, he's living up near the EIRE S2 vicinity. I went, oh. And then I said to him, does he live at number such and such? And he says, how do you know? The name, I said the name of the estate to him, and he goes, and he sort of went pale and looked at me. He says, I'll tell you what now, you give your son that €1,000 very quickly, because what that chap is telling you is the truth. And he looked at me. I says, I'm not joking. Believe me, I lived in it back in the 90s, and I know exactly now what his fear is. He, I don't know, did he ever give his son the money or anything else?
No, but it was further validation for you. Tell me, how long did you stick it out in there?
8 months.
Oh, wow. God, you should have got a medal for it, because I think I would have been gone within a day or two.
Actually, to be quite honest, I would have been if I had to have the finances.
Yes, of
but
course.
Realistically, I didn't at the time.
You're caught.
So
I get it. First of all, how old was this house?
This house was, say, the build on this house was roughly about 25 years old.
So it was contemporary, 50s or 60s or whatever it was. So,
60s, I'd say.
Yeah, so it wasn't that old at all. And was it remote from any other houses?
It was in an estate.
It was in an estate.
Okay. Yeah. To look at it now, you think it was a very peaceful estate and everything else, but realistically, inside this house, it was its own personal hell.
Yeah. You mentioned now, and now is an interesting time, because you can probably go back on the internet and research the history of the land, at least it was on.
I did research the history of the land, and there was an interesting point on it. And I met a chippy one day, okay, a carpenter. Now, he worked on those houses, and he sort of said to me that the houses themselves were partially built on famine land to a degree.
On what land, sorry?
Famine.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. And he said that when they were digging up the ground, they came across a variation of skeletons. And it took time and process before this was all sort of laid to rest. It was cleared out and everything else. But realistically, what the builders really had done was disturb graveyard.
They desecrated it, yeah. They desecrated a famine pit. Probably there was a commercial imperative to get things done, so I'm sure it wasn't probably, or any disinterring that went on was probably done with very little respect.
I'd say more likely. And you see, that sort of validated it for me then, that what we were dealing with here now wasn't just one individual passing away inside the house, but there was multiple things that behind it all that literally contributed this haunt. But it wasn't the only. Years later, I found out there was another house in the estate that was having problems. Now, I don't know exactly to what extent or anything else, but I know certain people were talking about having issues, and it was always going up for sale as well. So it's obvious that wherever the burial was, literally this house would have been sitting on it. And when it got cleared away, whatever stayed behind, like an attachment, it sort of volleyed on in the land. That's where it was coming from.
Of course, yeah. I think what happens at times is something traumatic or horrific happens in an area at certain times. Yeah, maybe certain atmospherics can bring it back into play. The only thing I'd say in respect of yours, as we touched on earlier, is it got personal. So that would sound like an individual entity or spirit of some kind. And, maybe it was their way of saying move on as well, get out. I know it's a classic. We use it here all the time. Get out. Get out. There you go. So that was the end of that, or was there anything else? What happened then in PJ's life to pursue paranormal? Oh, we'll be finding out in the coming weeks. Sorry, folks, I had to cut it there just for reasons of time. P.J. Doogue, thank you so much. I will be using the hour and probably hour and a half of audio that we had, as I said, coming soon. Now, after this, we need to talk.
Hi, Jenny Sullivan here. I am the creator and founder of Emerald Isle Paranormal Researchers. You can find our latest investigation of the beautiful and infamous Leap Castle. You can find that on our YouTube page and our Facebook page.
Mark Manning.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Probably about 2 months since my last upload. There were a variety of reasons for that delay, and I apologise to you. But then again, I'm sure you're not so pathetic that you're waiting with bated breath for every single episode of Scary Era, are you? No, I hope not. I hope you've got more going on in your life than that. And my life was really, really busy, because having come back from the States, there was a delay in me getting this uploaded. Essentially, a little miscommunication between myself and Paranormal UK Radio, who are fantastic, because they slingshot the episode around all the major platforms. But we were both in, I think, silly season mind, so I delayed and delayed and delayed, and neglect got me by the throat, but not without good reason. There was illness in the family. My wife was very, very sick with a COVID type thing. I got it as well. Then I got amazingly awful toothache, which I don't recommend to anybody. Antibiotics seem to have seen that off. Now, I'm looking for you to contribute to the show. If you'd like to read for us, be it your own paranormal experience or you found a piece that you want to read and share, get in touch, paranormalireland at protonmail.com. I will produce it for you. I will speak to you if you want as an interview. I will jump backflips for you. Just get in touch, paranormalireland at protonmail.com. Now, personally speaking, 2 paranormal incidents happened to me recently. The first is a dream, a very vivid one. Some would call it a visitation dream, and in it, I'm with my late mother. And I'm really contrite because I'm apologising to her over something I did in my 20s, which she didn't approve of. But of course, being in your 20s, you think you're invincible and you ignore all the good, well-intentioned advice of your parents and loved ones, don't you? Well, I did. I was that stubborn young man, and I wouldn't listen to her, and I went ahead and did it, and she was proved 110% correctamundo. So I'm in the dream and I'm saying, Mum, about that thing, I'm so sorry, and I'm crying in the dream. And honestly, folks, I felt the consoling pat on the head that a mother gives her child. So much so, it was so vivid and real, I bolted upright in the bed. Wasn't Mrs. Manning, and that's for sure, because she was snoring her head off. The second thing concerns the last episode we had of Scary Era. You might remember we covered an unresolved murder of a gay gentleman called Charles South in 1982. Well, I was out that direction in South County Dublin for a long, long walk, and on my way back, I felt drawn to go to a certain area. Sure enough, within a minute, I found myself standing outside Annesley Mews. Proviso, if you're living around Dublin, don't be going to Annesley Mews and annoying people. I'm sure they want to distance themselves completely from that bloody history that went on in 1982. So leave them alone. But anyway, I found myself outside the gate, literally, and I went, wow, it sounds fanciful, but I felt drawn to it. It was like I was called to it. And I'm not just making that up. And you see, the thing was, for years, I knew about the murder and I had a rough idea where it occurred, but I was totally wrong. It was in the vicinity, but I was wrong. And suddenly, because we broadcast the piece, it would seem okay. It could be a quinky-dink coincidence. But there I was, drawn to right outside where that awful murder happened all those years ago. Coming up next, we're going to hear about ghostly goings-on in Lismore Heritage Centre, County Waterford, because the PSII team, paranormal investigators, have been hard at work and they've something to share. And as well as that, later on, we're going to take a snapshot of history from 1985 to be precise, where a family felt they had to flee their council house in favour of a 4-berth caravan. And it wasn't just one of those, oh, we want an upgrade stories as well. There was a lot of reality to it, so you'll be able to hear what happened to the Courtney family back in 1985. But before that as well, we will be back in the leafy, affluent suburbs of Dublin South for poltergeist type happenings reported by Helena Byrne 5 years ago or so. Off we go to Lismore.
An Irish paranormal research group, Paranormal Supernatural Investigations Ireland, PSII, has reported unusual phenomena at the Lismore Heritage Centre in County Waterford, following an overnight investigation of the site's historic courtroom on the 2nd of August 2025. The team described witnessing a truly strange optical phenomenon during their visit, suggesting it may be linked to the building's past judicial role. Last night at the Lismore Heritage site, we captured a truly strange optical phenomenon in the old courtroom. Is it possible that we've stumbled upon a portal to another dimension? The group posted on their Facebook page. The energy in this room was strong, especially considering its history. The courtroom, formerly used for criminal sentencing in the 18th and 19th centuries, is located within the Heritage Centre, which was part of the broader Lismore Castle estate. Historical accounts indicate that individuals sentenced there were sometimes taken to Gallows Hill, roughly 1 kilometre away, for execution. This is where individuals learn their fate after sentencing, with some tragically sent to Gallows Hill to be hanged not far from here. The post continued. PSII suggested that the emotional weight of the courtroom's past may have left a lasting impression on the site.
The history of this location adds layers of intrigue to what we witnessed. Imagine the souls that once filled this room, hearing the gavel fall and facing their ultimate judgment. The weight of their stories hangs in the air, and it makes you wonder, could there be something more than just memories lingering here? And that's not all. We also have an incredible image of a 7-foot translucent, entirely captured near this very spot. What does it mean? Are we witnessing echoes of the past? Or is there something else at play?
The figure, said to be approximately 2.13 metres in height, reportedly appeared near the former judge's bench. While PSII has not yet released the image publicly, they have indicated it will form part of their ongoing documentation. At the time of writing, we have not seen the reported image, but remain interested in reviewing any materials made available. While Lismore is known for its deep historical roots, including its ecclesiastical and legal past, there is limited officially released documentation of paranormal activity at the site.
Hi, it's PJ here from Vogue Paranormal. We've just completed our latest investigation in Leap Castle. Our next 2 upcoming investigations will be Redwood Castle and Leap Castle The Return. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. And of course, our team is Vogue Paranormal.
Oh, and just a little note as well. I believe Vogue Paranormal's Facebook page was down recently. I think it may have even been hacked. So good luck to the team with restoring that. Now let's see what Bertie Brosnan is up to. Followed by possible poltergeist goings-on in leafy suburb Vesey Place, Dublin South.
Bertie Brosnan here. Recently did the Scary Era podcast with Mark and I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you can listen to that podcast as well. But I'm a filmmaker, author and video producer for anyone that doesn't know me. You can get all my information, all my links at www.bertiebrosnanfilms.com, including my recent book, The Forgotten Prince, a novella detailing Brian Boru, the Battle of Clontarf, his son Donnacha and Brodir of Man, the villain of the piece. This is a part of a trilogy and I'm writing the sequel at the moment. You can get it via my shop, www.bertiebrosnanfilms.com, or just go on to Amazon and type in The Forgotten Prince, Bertie Brosnan, and it should come up. Thank you so much. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the show.
We are here in Vesey Place. Just over in that direction you'll find Dún Laoghaire. Over to the side here you'll find Monkstown. This is a really, really beautiful part of South Dublin and the Dún Laoghaire Rathdown County Council area. But these houses behind me here actually have a very dark history. And you wouldn't think it with the birds singing in the trees here, the seagulls overhead. We've had plenty of children cycling by. It's a lovely area. But houses 1, 3 and 5 are said to have been tormented by a poltergeist for many years. Collectors of this story, there were 2 collectors, Desmond O'Connor, who was from Blackrock, and a gentleman from Monkstown Farm called Edward Noel Coffey. And they continue to repeat over and over in their account that these accounts of poltergeist activity can be proven by various witnesses. It's also said that in house number 3, there was an old woman living there, and at about 11:30 at night, she heard a voice telling her to stop brushing her hair and that she was going to die alone in an asylum. And 4 years later, allegedly, that is exactly what happened. But in all 3 houses, like I said, there was poltergeist activity, and the people living there would hear dressers jumping up from the floor and smashing back down again. They would also see black cats making their way underneath the doors, even though the doors were sealed shut and locked in some cases. What I would absolutely love to do is go and knock on some of these doors and ask them if they've experienced any poltergeist activity, but I'm not quite sure what sort of response I would get, so maybe I should leave it.
Yeah, a couple of things over the years, but I've learned, well, I suppose it's not learned, I've just become accustomed to it, and I think it's kind of, it's maybe it's another sense or something. But often when you go into places, you'll get a feeling for the place, and you'll get a feeling of whether or not it's comfortable. And whatever causes that, who knows what causes that, but we have an intuition, we have an inbuilt intuition. I can't describe what it is or where it comes from, or the physics of it or the chemistry of it, but it's there, and anybody will tell you to stick with your intuition. If you think something doesn't feel right, then don't hang around.
Superb advice from regular contributor to Scary Era, David McGlynn, aka The Squire. And don't hang around either. If you've got an Irish paranormal tale to tell, simply email paranormalireland@protonmail.com and it'll be read out for you. Or you get to tell it on air yourself. That's paranormalireland@protonmail.com.
Okay, so happy Friday. I'm recording this at 8:24 a.m. on the 22nd of August, which is a day or two since I spoke to you on this because I've been editing away. A couple of things have happened. Toothache has got worse. I mean, I was up at 4 a.m. this morning with it, so I'm battling it on. But Mark Johnson from Paranormal Radio UK was in touch just yesterday saying, what's the story? We haven't had a show from you in yonks. And I said, great, Mark. I was wondering where you guys were, so I'm on board. Mark said, thumbs up, do it. So, yeah, I intend to. Now, before I go, here is a little historical piece you're going to listen to, dated from 1985. I mentioned it earlier. It concerns a family who were in a council house in County Longford in 1985. Now, it's in the public domain, but if anybody has an issue with it and they want to come forward, I'm happy to credit them. You're going to listen to it. It's a little bit of old Irlanda encapsulated. Whatever happened to the Courtney family? Whatever happened to Father Bland and his box of sand? Who knows? But listen on.
I heard it cracking in the ceiling. Came from there to the walls, from there to the boards, there into the beds. And this heavy flapping, just like an animal with chains. So I got the priest down, and it's no good.
The church has been able to do very little to help Patrick and Mary Courtney. For a family who's always had problems materially, it now seems the spiritual world is against them too. They've been living without a toilet or running water for more than 4 months, but for the Courtneys, an old 4-berth caravan is heaven compared to the hell they suffered in their council house.
Well, I've been hearing this the whole live long time. From the third night I went into that house, up to last summer that we pulled out, and my husband and the kids has only heard it for about 3 weeks to a month before they left it. They would not believe it in any way. But when they heard it themselves, they did believe it. I was telling them the truth. There was an audience there.
The Courtneys were very disappointed in the way the church handled their problem. They got no comfort at all from the parish priest, Father Bland, who, when we called to see him, refused to talk to us. This is the house the Courtneys fled from, number 13 St. Matthew's Terrace. The family have lived here since the house was first built in 1974. It's a county council house for which the Courtneys paid £12 a week. When the pounding noise became unbearable, they approached the priests of the parish.
They told us it was nothing to harm us or anything, but still I couldn't cope with it. It was just getting the better of my mind the whole time, praying in my mind the whole time, the way it was this flapping and tramping and knocking, and then the lights going on and off and one thing and another, you know, and I couldn't stick it any longer.
Well, Patrick, Father Bland recommended that you put sand outside the door. What was that about?
He told me that to get a bag of sand, this was sand for building, and he'll up outside the back door out the bag, and not to step in it. If you wanted, he said he wanted to go out to jump it, and not to walk on it.
But he didn't do it. I didn't get the sand.
Because we partly guessed what he wanted it for. He wanted whatever was in, he wanted to settle it like that. Because it's people to take sand now to settle it both like that, all right.
What about the lights? The lights were going on and off as well, weren't they?
Well, the lights were on and off in the back room now. I couldn't keep the light put off. Father Walls put off the light himself, and still he denied it. Father Bland, he did put it off after he putting it off.
I heard it about 3 weeks after Mommy and Daddy heard it.
And what was your reaction? Were you frightened by it?
I was frightened.
And had you been sceptical all along that your mother was hearing this noise in the first place?
Yeah.
And what did it sound like?
Pounding and tramping our feet, knocking on the doors, and the delphine and the beds and all beside us.
The Courtneys' neighbours in St. Matthew's Terrace are now expecting a new family to move into number 13. They're due to arrive this week.
I think there is something in it, because the parish priest came down several times to pray in the house, and when the priests were there was no sound at all, and when he was gone the sound was there, and they lived in a shed for 3 weeks out the water in the cold at night and everything, and I still say there is something in it, because the priest wouldn't comment on it.
Have you been in the house?
No, I haven't, or I wouldn't go into it.
A lot of people were saying that they left the house because of the rent. And as far as I know, the rent was paid up to date. And I wouldn't live in the house if I got for nothing.
So what do you want the council to do for you now?
Well, if they supply me with a mobile home or a large caravan, myself, my husband and my 2 children, I'll agree to take it from them. But if they don't, well, I take no house. I'll have to hold my brother's caravan.
So you're prepared to stay here if they don't?
If they don't.
Have they objected to you parking the caravan here?
Well, I've heard nothing so far from them now. I've got no letters now to move or anything. But if they do, I've nowhere to move.
Longford County Council have so far not approached the Courtneys about the site of their caravan, which was loaned to them by Mary's brother. But their position on number 13 St Matthew's Terrace is very clear.
We did provide a house for the Courtneys. They left it voluntarily, and as such I think we would consider that for the foreseeable future anyway, we wouldn't see them as being eligible for rehousing.
One of the suggestions they make themselves is that the council should provide them with a mobile home or some kind of a caravan in which they could live in permanently, because they've said they will not go into any house again. Is that feasible from your point of view at all?
No, I don't think it is, because this would be a retrograde step in the sense that we endeavour as far as possible to provide permanent accommodation for people who need houses, and 'tis only as a last resort that we would ever, or even in an emergency case, that we would ever dream of providing a mobile home or caravan or such accommodation. We believe as a council in providing permanent accommodation for those who need it.
Meanwhile, the Courtneys are staying put, without a house, without running water, and without very much hope.
I'd never go through the same again in any house as I went through that.
From Mark Manning and Scary Era, see you down the road. Remember, get in touch. Paranormal Ireland at protonmail.com.